者はどっち悪魔の実の能力対決
Welcome to the Pirate Odyssey, the world's premier One Piece review podcast show or whatever. The entire conceit of this is that I, Sour Lemon, a longtime viewer of One Piece and big fan, have and will be watching One Piece with CamCam here, and we will go through every single arc, and we will talk in depth at every single arc and her experience as a new viewer. And so, of course, first up in that process is Romance Dawn, the opening of One Piece, which is the first 2 episodes, I think. The Alvida pirates and Luffy's initial backstory with Shanks. So we'll just start off right off the bat. What was your initial impressions and experience?
So my initial impression of Luffy was that he's that he's a really simple guy, right? He says what's on his mind. He doesn't bullshit around. He just tells you how he feels. And he's just super honest with his feelings. And I really like that in a main character. And I do like too that what was his name, like Kobe or Colby?
Kobe. It's Kobe, yes.
Okay. Yeah, like Kobe is he's scared to leave the environment that he's in, and because Luffy is so brave, he looks up to him. And he gains the courage to leave with Luffy. And so that's how big of an impact Luffy does have on others. So I did like that about Luffy's character a lot.
Yeah, the first 2 episodes, for having a few problems with, pacing or whatever, as is going to be typical of this 1999 shonen adaptation.
Yeah, the pacing is a little rough for me.
Yeah,
it's like it's so like some of the episodes are like so stressful because of the pacing.
Yeah, it'll just sit on things for a while that it does not need to sit on. This is no, 2020 Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Kaisen style beat.
Yeah.
But we do right off the bat have a very solid introduction to the world of One Piece and its main character, Luffy, who, as you said, is very simple-minded, but he's and straightforward, but he's also additionally like brash and brazen and strongman. And the way that he beats up all of his opponents into victory is through his rubber powers. What do you think of the rubber powers?
Which I thought was like really fucking crazy, right? I was like, what the fuck is happening, bro? Like the way he stretches out his body and just uses his full force to just like punch and use his arms as like a whip. It's just crazy. Like he's just so reckless. He has no plan set in place. He just like starts swinging. And it's so different from any other like shonen manga that you see, especially now. And that's really what I like about One Piece. Like all the powers like are really unique and weird, like wonky. I would say
it's very interesting, and it demonstrates not only the author Eiichiro Oda's creativity, but also how well he understands the medium of manga and how to draw in it. Because, and by extension, animation as well, because it kind of translates over into animation. And how well it works on a manga panel to have a stretching arm and to follow that arm back and forth and to like angle the camera and the depictions of it to emphasize the way that the arm works. And you can even see this somewhat with Sanji, who we'll talk about at another point in time, with his kicks, because even though he's not a rubber person, the way it's often framed, his legs are like way more elongated than they would physically actually be, and it does a lot to really sell the way that he does combat. Same goes for Luffy, obviously, but more importantly, that it's funny. It's funny to have a rubber man.
It is. it's like and it's like when I first saw it, I think I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like this is so crazy. And I think you rewind it a couple times so I could watch it again. And I did look at the manga a little bit, and like you said, like it is really cool to see in the manga just like the fluid motions of everything, on paper. So yeah, I mean it's like it's just really funny.
A lot of humor is drawn from Luffy's powers over the course of the series, particularly when they're not in the middle of some high intensity action dramatic stuff. He's doing some wacky stupid shit, stretching his mouth out and
Hmm.
doing some other stuff. And that's like there's a sort of style of humor that Oda uses in his work that's like very slapstick,
Yeah.
but also makes excellent use of the kinds of powers that he has developed. What do you think of the humor? Do you find it funny?
Um, like sometimes I do find it funny and like silly, and then sometimes like just the way the pacing is in the show, like sometimes it can get a little old, and you're just like, oh okay, haha, like let's get it over with. Come on, let's keep moving. But like I do find it funny in like a very like ironic way, just like in a almost like just it's so ridiculous. It's funny. Like you can't believe like somebody would actually say that.
Yeah,
And Luffy's voice actor is really unique. Like I love Luffy's voice actor. I don't know who they are, but
actress.
okay, yeah, they are just so funny, and they really bring out like Luffy's character.
Yeah.
I like his stretching noises and his like Luffy is always making little noises, like when he's
Yeah.
eating. Like
Little
he's just
grunts
such
and
a
sounds.
yeah, and it's just great, and that's really funny to me. Like that's hilarious.
Yeah, his
So
voice
yeah.
actress does a phenomenal job, even if it does have that typical shonen voice actor
Hmm.
veneer that's like sort of not quite real, I guess you would say. It's like
Hmm.
it doesn't feel like a human voice the way that most actual characters do. But the main characters shonen adaptations, because they are often like some level of teenager, and on top of that, done by an actress rather than an actor.
Yeah.
The voices don't always fit quite right with what you would necessarily expect. This is particularly the case with, say, Son Goku in Dragon Ball, um,
Yeah.
where it definitely worked for when he was a child in the original Dragon Ball. But when you get into Z, and he's this really buff, swole dude running around
Awkward.
punching people, it doesn't quite fit the way that you would expect it to. Whereas when in the dub, the voice actor that they have for that, it fits a whole lot better. He's like actually sounds like a masculine man.
Yeah.
Which, so it
Even
is,
like
by the way, worth noting. We're watching the sub, not the dub.
yeah. And like even like Armin in Attack on Titan, like his sub actor is a woman, and then like when he turns like 16, 17, it's like super awkward. Like you expect it. Like you're just like, what the fuck? Because like she's trying really hard to make him sound older, and it just like doesn't work. So yeah.
So even though it's slightly odd in that same sort of way, she it still does like a phenomenal job with Luffy, as she has played him for over 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
And just continues to really hit the way that Luffy is supposed to sound.
Yeah. So like I'm excited to see how she does his character further on as he grows and like learns. I'm sure he's gonna further grow as a character. So that'll be fun to see how she does that.
So, a couple of things.
Hmm.
What do you think of the setting of One Piece, and specifically how they set it up in the beginning of the show, like before the opening, where there's like Gold Roger, King of the Pirates, um,
Um.
left get wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, King of the Pirates, gathered this and everything else the world has to offer. And when he was about to be executed, he said, "You want my treasure? You can have it. I left everything I gathered together in one place. Now you just have to go find it." Now there's the Great Pirate Era.
I thought it was like a little generic, like a little like shonen generic, like you're going on an adventure, and like I guess like learning to become like a man or growing up.
Yeah,
So like I thought it was a little generic, but I mean it's growing on me as the world is like expanding. So yeah.
yeah, it is interesting because now that you say it, it is really generic,
Yeah.
technically speaking. Is just actually a sort of, in a sense, growing up story for Luffy and just exploring the world. But at the same time, it works perfectly within what One Piece is trying to accomplish as a series, because it's meant to be no an in-depth exploration of that world, almost more than like anything else.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to start off with a basic premise like that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it immediately sets up like what kind of worlds that you are embarking into and what kind of person, or rather, what kind of goal Luffy is going to have as a pirate. Because you're
Yeah.
walking into a world where you're expected to have a lot of piracy going on, a lot of people sailing around and doing whatever the fuck they want, um, because of
Yeah.
the Great Pirate Era.
Yeah, and it seems like Luffy isn't the type of character to like hunt for gold or like treasure. He's just in it for the adventure, pretty much.
Yes, but
And you know he wants to become king of the pirates and
yeah,
stuff.
we'll
But like,
we'll talk
he,
about that later in
okay,
Orange Town though.
okay,
Um, but let's go back to devil fruits as a
Mhm.
concept in as a whole, and not just Luffy's rubber powers, and how they essentially can be a vehicle for creativity in its entirety, and also the dynamic of the swimming in a world full of water.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like I mean, I guess you kind of see this a lot, like in fiction, like you kind of like you're cursed with like you take something you're not supposed to, you gain great power, but you're also cursed. You know. So you know that concept is kind of thrown around, but I do like it.
Well,
So and so it's like eating a forbidden fruit, you know.
yeah.
So
What I think is cool about it in One Piece in particular is that the you actually really understand the intensity of that trade-off. Whereas in a lot of other
mhm.
works of fiction, the sort of curse that you'll undertake is not necessarily directly related to the lifestyle that you're undergoing.
That's
Whereas
true.
in this case, you are literally trading in a lot of ways your ability to sail the ocean in exchange for a potentially really powerful ability,
Mhm.
um but at the same time it could not be one, and it could be like fucking anything. It could literally be anything.
Yeah, especially in the world of One Piece, like
Yeah,
anything, anything.
yeah,
So I mean
you're
I'm
gonna see
excited to
some really
see that.
stupid ones later on.
Oh my god, yeah. So yeah, so I guess I'm excited to see like do they I can't remember like if they actually know like what the power is with each devil fruit. I can't remember if Shanks said that or not. Like, but
um
yeah.
for the most part, no, you don't know what it is
Mm.
before you eat it. However, later on they introduce this concept of like a devil fruit encyclopedia.
Oh, okay.
And some of the more powerful ones are like actually known. But it basically depends on how well studied you are. And the way that they actually work, though they haven't said this yet, is that when you die as somebody who ate a devil fruit, it the devil fruit like reincarnates into a fruit somewhere else in the world.
Oh,
So that's
that's
how
pretty
they're
cool.
able to know or chronicle the different types of devil fruits, and what they
Oh,
look like.
well, that's interesting. And that's pretty different, you know, from the usual like forbidden fruit concept. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. Um,
But
so
but it's also that you know even Luffy can't swim. He's willing to take the risk to achieve his dream. So
well,
I do like that. Yeah.
that's actually just like not accurate. He ate the fruit on accident.
Well, I mean, that's true. Yeah, but even then,
And he actually even
it's
couldn't
like,
swim before that.
oh my god, yeah. But even then, he's like, well, fuck it. Like, I'm still gonna go out to sea. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, well, it's his dream, and he had that dream even before
Before,
he
yeah.
met Shanks.
Hmm.
But we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves. We first got to talk about Alvida and Kobe,
Hmm.
and how how Alvida introduces basically the concept of different types of pirates as compared to Luffy. Um, in her sense, the more like general understanding of a pirate as somebody who walks around and loots and plunders people with basically reckless disregard, as opposed to Luffy, who goes out of his way to help people.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of Alvida?
I don't know. She's a scary bitch. Like, I like she like you said, you kind of get the concept of like what kind of an evil pirate is in One Piece. But she's pretty menacing, and she's pretty menacing to Kobe and the rest of her crew. Like, nobody really likes her.
Yeah, she's a fucking dick. But more
Yeah,
importantly, she's fat, and it's funny that they make fun of her for being fat.
yeah.
Who's the
But
most beautiful woman in
God
these
forbid you tell
seas?
her.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely you, Alvida. You're definitely the most beautiful woman here, with
Oh
your
yeah, that's
massive
right.
club.
Yeah. Hmm. Whenever he's
Um,
like, no, the fuck you ain't. Yeah.
but more important to this short introduction is Kobe, and the dynamic that he has with Luffy, the dreams that they both have.
Yeah.
So, what do you have to say about the dreams of Kobe and Luffy?
Which he wants to be a marine, right? And I guess they both have like like Luffy, with each person he meets. Like, I guess they kind of tell him what their dream is, and he really values that in people, like people who have dreams and goals and who like want to do something unique with their lives. And so Luffy's like, all right, like I'll support you, like I'll help you out, you know. And like I said, I really like that about Luffy, and I think like what we can learn from Kobe is that, like, he was scared to kind of leave his environment. But so sometimes if we have a friend or like somebody to help us like leave that situation, we can move on and achieve our dreams. So I do like that, and I think that's a good lesson to learn. Like, the first episode, you get into, like what One Piece is about,
Yeah.
basically.
I think what's interesting to note about Kobe's dream as we move forward through the series is his idealization of what it means to be a Marine, of a
Yeah.
person who helps and protects people, and how that dynamic of what Kobe aspires to be versus the reality of the Marines, will
Which they're a bunch of hard asses.
will as shift as we go forward.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing that I will immediately note with regards to Kobe, this is a running theme, one of the core running themes of One Piece, that in every single arc that happens is liberation. And so
Hmm.
immediately, what Luffy does is he liberates Kobe from the oppressive claws of Alvida, who basically kidnapped him and forced him to be a cabin boy.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
so
he does call Kobe out like on a shit. He's like, "Man, you're like a wimp. I hate you. Like, I don't like
yeah,
that
he
about
does
you."
literally say that, doesn't he? I hate
Yeah,
you.
and and sometimes we need like a rude awakening like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that about him too. Like, just how honest he is. So yeah,
Luffy the liberator. Um,
yeah.
but let's move on to Luffy's backstory. What are do you know? Are there any significant differences between child Luffy and adult Luffy?
I don't think so. I mean, like, I think they're kind of the same.
Yes, they are.
Like Luffy's just like a little taller now, you know?
Yeah. I think Child Luffy, actually, I don't want to say he was like louder, but I feel like Child Luffy just talked more often than anything. Or rather
And
more
he was like a little bit more I don't
he
know,
didn't
like
have
maybe had a
enough
little bit more of a
confidence.
temper.
He didn't
Yeah.
have the confidence that he does now, and I think that's the key difference.
Yeah.
But that it's just Luffy interacting with basically anybody is always funny as it happens. And the person
Yeah.
that he's interacting with in this case is red-haired Shanks, the pirate, who serves basically as Luffy's role model as a pirate to be. What are some of these ideals that Shanks embodies that Luffy tries to emulate as he goes forward?
I think Shanks, it seems like he cares a lot about his crew, and like he will kind of take on like the punishment um to kind of like keep his crew safe, even though it's kind of like humiliating if he keeps like him and his crew out of trouble, like easy peasy, like he'll do it. And also he's willing to protect the weak, like Luffy. He's willing to protect, and also he's willing to make sacrifices too, so for his friends. So I think Luffy took those to heart, and he embodies that. So,
Yeah,
and I think he took a lot of the like a lot of what Shanks is, or what Shanks like portrays, and he took that. So yeah.
yeah. There's this interesting approach that One Piece takes towards like personal insults versus like actionable threats. And who they are applied to, and whether or not that aggravates Luffy, or in this case Shanks. And it's
Hmm.
like, and it's hard to describe, but at the same time easy to understand when somebody is just harmlessly like insulting you, or in the case of Shanks, like shattering some beer or alcohol bottles in front of you or on top of your head or whatever,
Yeah, and
versus
insulting your pride.
yeah, insulting your pride. Like, who your pride does not matter as much as the safety of your friends. And so when those mountain bandits go after Luffy, Shanks then takes action. Um,
Hmm.
it's a very interesting dynamic that we'll see throughout the series. And then
Yeah, and
also,
and
oh,
Shanks is also like really powerful too. He embodies like strength and willpower. So, Luffy wants that too as well.
interesting that you say willpower, but that's many episodes in advance.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And then on top of that, he also sacrifices his arm to save Luffy,
Yeah.
which is another value that we see not as much in Luffy, as in Zoro. Zoro will often be the one who sacrifices physically himself for the sake of others, whereas Luffy goes through the motions of doing so, but more often than not does not actually experience any like um, permanent disfiguration, so to speak.
Yeah. And Shanks did it like without a second thought, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the
And
sacrifice
and
without a second thought.
yeah. And poor Luffy as a kid, he just cried as a baby. That was so sad.
Yeah,
That really got to me, like seeing him cry like that.
yeah. Oh, you just reminded me. I didn't write it down. He so desperately wanted to be a badass that he caused the scar under his eye, trying
Oh
to
yeah.
stab his own eye out.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh my god.
So fucking stupid. Um, so that's all for Romance Dawn, the start of the adventure. Actually, I had one other thing to say. In Japanese, I didn't like super thoroughly research this.
Hmm.
But there's a term that is used that in the subtitles is translated into friend. It's the term nakama. And if I'm not wrong, there actually is like a difference between the normal term for friend that, say, Luffy will use for most people that he likes versus Nakama that he specifically uses for like his crew members and people that he considers like a close part of his identity. And so the way to at least the way I have always thought about it is a lot of times when you see friend, specifically when it's in reference to his crewmates, the more accurate way to think about it is actually the word comrade, though obviously not with the Russian connotation, but like we're more than friends but less than lovers, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. But moving on to the, shall we say, first kind of arc in the series, the Marine Base, the only arc I don't know the name of because I don't know the name of the island it takes place on.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, it's the introduction of Roronoa Zoro, the bounty hunter.
Oh my god, that name is such a mouthful, honestly.
Hey, at least it's not Roronoa Zolo.
Oh yeah, I saw that in the manga.
Yeah.
I was like, who the fuck is Zolo?
This is Zolo. His name's Zolo. He's like a samurai. And an Lady, Nami's not shy.
Oh my god.
That's how Viz Media originally started translating Zoro's name for the English releases. And I don't know at what point they were ever like told that it was wrong, but by now they there's no way they don't know it's wrong, but they've continued using Zolo throughout the manga through its entire release. Weird. Yeah. It's very odd, but it's I think like a sunk cost fallacy type thing. There has been like a level of speculation that it was like a copyright thing with Zoro, the sword fighter from Princess Bride, I think. I don't know if it's Princess Bride.
That's weird though. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, but that I wouldn't. But that doesn't sound right. I would not think that was the case.
I wouldn't think so either.
I think it's just some cost fallacy. In any case, an overview of your thoughts on the Marine Base.
I really like that arc. I mean, I think mostly because I like when I like when characters are willing to like kind of put their pride aside and will protect others and kind of take the hit and take the discipline. You know, Zoro is tied up, and if he can last like 30 days without food or water, he can like be free, which of course isn't the case. We know later. And he's willing to stick it out for his freedom. And and the little girl, she tries to give him a rice ball, and I just thought that was so sweet. And he still eats it. Like, it's covered in dirt, but he still eats it.
And he says and I thought delicious.
I know, and it's like that's like so thoughtful and like so sweet, and it made her so happy. And I don't know, like that. I just love that. Like, that's just like so sweet. It really like touched my soul, and I think it, of course it touched Luffy too, and in that that Zoro saw that the injustice that was happening and was willing to like take a stand for the mother and the daughter. And Luffy saw that and was like, I want you a part of my crew. Like, I will help you out. Let's go. And of course, Zoro eventually joins the crew, and I think they make a great team. Like, it seems like they work really well together. Like, it's they both understand each other very well, it seems like. So,
Zoro and Luffy are at their core very similar characters. Even if their motivation is different, and the way that like Zoro sleeps and drinks booze and weightlifts, and that's like all he does when he's not fighting. Even though that's not like Luffy, like he's still a funny guy, but he's far less outspoken and slapstick and flamboyant about his humor. Even though that's the case, their values as people are very similar, and the way that they interact with what's going on is very similar.
Yeah, the world around them and the people around them. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And like Zoro is willing to like Luffy Luffy gets them in all kind of trouble, right? And like it doesn't handle like they're in a military base, like with all kinds of Marines, like
Zoro deals with the stupidest shit from Luffy.
yeah. And like they could get caught at any time. Like there's tons of people around. I think like Zoro's having trouble like finding his swords or whatever. And
Because he's currently detained, his swords are being kept inside the Marine base.
yeah, that's right. And so Zoro's just like, okay, whatever. Like I guess I'm coming along for the ride. Like what else am I gonna do? and he just does that throughout the show. Like it's so funny.
Yeah,
Their dynamic together. Yeah.
And we'll get there. But after he sees what Luffy does, he swears his allegiance. But we'll break this down, piece by piece. So immediately, starting out the arc, or rather after Kobe does some exposition as to who Zoro is, as they're walking through the town, they mention the names of Zoro and Morgan, and the townspeople react exactly the same way for both of them, which is interesting because one is like a threatening bounty hunter of sorts, but one is supposed to be the protective Marine captain. So, what do you think of that sort of initial impression?
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's kind of like not a very good parallel, and it kind of makes you like, I guess kind of wonder like what's going on. Like you would think, well, like I was kind of thinking like a bounty hunter that like, yeah, okay, that's kind of scary, but like a bounty hunter that works for the government, like he can't be that bad, right? I guess I was kind of thinking, but like the Marine like leader, like okay, I can kind of like guess like he might be kind of scary as fuck. Right. But he's just like a really and like the military leader, he's just like a really like egotistical maniac, right? Like like he's pretty he's like he's just not a good person, right? I mean,
Yeah. So let's talk about Zoro's circumstances in this arc a little bit, as why he's being strung up, which is for defying the son of the Marine captain. What do
oh
you
my
what do you
god,
think of
he's so annoying.
what do you think of Hamepo and his threatening a child with dogs?
He's such a bitch. Oh my god. I can't even remember what the kid did, honestly, to him. But it's not that bad. Oh my god.
If I remember correctly, she was like being a waiter for her mom's restaurant or whatever, and she like spilled some stuff on him or something to that effect.
Yeah. And he like okay, yeah. And he I think she like yelled at him back or something. I can't even remember. And he just like fucking threatens her. And Zoro's like, no, like I ain't taking that shit. Like go take your bullshit somewhere else. And and of course he doesn't have it and has him strung up.
Yeah.
And it kind of
He
shows you like
uses
the
the town
bind.
against Zoro to string
Yeah.
him up. Like if you harm me, then or if you kill me, then everybody in this town is gonna die.
Yeah. And it kind of shows like the predicament the town is in because everybody knows like everybody knows how he works. Like he uses his daddy as protection, and of course nobody wants to fuck with him.
He's a nepo
So,
baby.
yeah, pretty much. That's like
Yeah.
the perfect way to describe him. Oh my god, yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I'll discuss the next thing I want to say later. But yeah.
so immediately there's parallels between Zoro, Luffy, and by extension Shanks, and that Zoro is um, making a distinction between the threats that Helmeppo is making against the girl versus his action in stopping them, as well as standing up to injustices and making the personal sacrifice of being strung up instead of letting everybody in the town be harmed by his by insubordination of sorts.
Yeah.
And so
And then go ahead.
when Luffy encounters him and learns about this, he has this, he gains this sort of like attitude towards Zoro, and describe how Luffy thinks about Zoro, and afterwards.
Like Luffy kind of gets like the serious face once he knows like what's really going on with Zoro, and like I think they find out like in the restaurant that like I think it's in the restaurant that the that he's not really gonna let him go, right? Like after the 30
Yeah,
days.
this
He's
is
just gonna kill
after
him.
the rice ball, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Luffy does have like a good attitude towards him. Like
Yeah. And it's interesting what Luffy does, because instead of immediately freeing Zoro after learning the predicament, he respects Zoro's choice of personal sacrifice for the sake of the townspeople instead of immediately intervening.
yeah.
And then it's only after he directly hears that they're going to execute Zoro anyways, then he decides to intervene. There's a sort of respect going on there. And then, of course, as you mentioned before, the rice ball incident is, I would say, the first instance in One Piece of how effective it is at emotionally drawing you in to what is going on and getting you emotionally invested. Because even though in this particular case, specifically because it's early on in the series, it's relatively simple, it's also extremely effective. You have this guy who was being starved for the sake of protecting people, and the girl he protected made food for him, and the guy who was the source of contention stomps on the rice balls, stomps on that salvation, so to speak. And then Zoro decides to eat it anyways. It's beautiful.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to. He wants to show that he appreciates that kindness. You know, he doesn't want to let that kindness go to waste.
I want to talk about the Marines last. First, what do you think of the three sword style, without getting into why he has the three sword style, which is very funny?
I thought it was I thought it was kind of silly at first, right?
I mean,
it
is super silly.
Like I was like, what are you gonna do with a sword in your mouth? Like, how does that work? And but to kind of see it in action, I mean, it is kind of cool. Like, it's always really cool to see Zoro use it, and you always get kind of excited to see him use it. So,
the anime, and by extension the manga, constantly works around the impracticality of having a sword in your mouth.
Oh yeah.
By just kind of like, for the most part, hiding what would technically be happening with that sword. Sometimes it shows it and it's really cool. You see it a couple of times in like Arlong and against Mihawk. But for the most part, it's like, here's attack name, big slash move, get cut. no details.
Pretty much. Yeah. But I mean, it looks cool. So like,
it does look cool, and he does have a lot of power stances with his three swords for all of his different techniques.
God, yes. I mean, he slays. He looks so cool, honestly.
He's the resident cool guy of the series, because even though his values and Luffy's are, like, as I said before, very similar to each other, Zoro's disposition... their personalities are very different, and Zoro's disposition just makes him the resident cool guy. And for that reason, he is a lot of specifically Americans' favorite One Piece character, at least from what I'm aware of. He's just cool.
Yeah. Like since we started watching, since we started watching One Piece, like on Twitter, I've been getting like a lot of recommendation for One Piece, and it's like all Zoro. That's all I get. Pictures of Zoro, like fan art and everything.
People love Zoro.
And you know, when he gets his bandana on, like, whoa, he's not playing. He's serious, bro.
Yeah, he's playing around when he puts that bandana on.
Pretty much.
So now for the quintessential core of this arc, which is the Marines. And this is going to be an emergent thing that I will likely talk about very frequently because it is one of my personal favorite themes of One Piece, which is that the Marines are the bad guys. They're not the only bad guys, but they are bad guys.
Yeah.
As a whole, they're sea cop, and they are sea cops. All cops are bad, but the Marines in this series are not good guys, and we see that immediately, or almost immediately, with Captain Morgan, the narcissistic asshole. So
he's just like a pompous asshole, and like nobody likes him. Like everybody's scared of him. Like his subordinates hate him.
Yeah, he's a narcissistic authoritarian. That's what I wrote down. And the way that Oda makes it immediately clear that this is the case is how he has his own subordinates attempt to erect a massive statue of himself on top of the Marine base.
Oh yeah, and I think I told you, it reminded me like of the Jesus statue.
Oh, Cristo Redentor, yeah.
Yeah.
Except, actually, I don't know. I actually don't know what circumstances that statue was put up, but when you are doing basically that, but for yourself and forcing people to do it who they aren't technically slaves in this circumstance, but they might as well be. Not exactly a good look. On top of the fact that, of course, the entire town is terrified of him.
Yeah.
And this is actually a good comparison to, we were in the middle of watching Logtown most recently, Captain Smoker, who was in the same position as Axe-Hand Morgan, but is the townspeople actually like him because he's actually a good person. He actually helps them.
Yeah, pretty much. Versus you never hear a good word about this guy ever. Like what good has he done for the townspeople? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's just a worthless asshole that probably spends all their tax dollars on that stupid statue. Honestly.
One silly but interesting thing to talk about in this circumstance, though, is corporal punishment and Axe-Hand Morgan's lack thereof. Where with the way that it's presented and the one time that he hits Hamepo, you can make the argument of maybe some children should be hit every once in a while so they don't turn out like him.
Maybe this kid should have got some spankings.
Yeah,
when he was a child.
Yeah, maybe you should have beat him up a little bit.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, and you would think, since he uses his father's name as protection, maybe him and his dad have some kind of relationship. No, not at all. He's like you're a bitch, pretty much.
He's you're literally worthless. You can't defend for yourself.
It's hilarious. I think I started laughing. I was like, wow.
Yeah. And then after that is the ending, or rather, there's fighting, and then the ending of the arc. There's cool fighting. My personal favorite part.
But Luffy accidentally breaking that statue. He's like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, that's
that was so funny. After he babbles on about dude, if you accidentally break this, I'm gonna kill you.
Oh yeah, somebody stumbles while erecting it, and he actually slashes them with his axe hand.
Yeah, and then Luffy's over here just whoop.
he accidentally shot himself too far with his gum rocket.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing about Luffy, man. He's always getting himself tangled. Limbs are getting tangled. He shoots himself too far up. Oh my god.
He's all over the place.
Yeah, honestly.
My favorite part about the action, though, is just that Zoro somehow cuts himself free. Literally how?
Honestly, yeah. Because Luffy's over here oh, these are really tight ropes. I can't untie them.
Yeah.
Weird.
Or I think it's more so Luffy doesn't know how to untie knots.
Yeah, I'm oh my god, dude, you're a pirate. Shouldn't you know how to untie knots? I'm confused.
Well, no, he can't sail a ship by himself. That's why he needs a crew.
That's why he needs help. Somebody help him.
Yeah. Yeah, That, and of course the iconic thing where he jumps in front of Zoro and all the bullets stretch out of his body, just
Oh
further,
yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah, just further solidifying or rather further emphasizing early on like how weird devil fruit powers are and how like stupid stuff happens with them. This is like frankly what I find a bit of an annoyance with early One Piece, specifically how when Kobe does it, but it drags on throughout most of the first arcs. How they just like basically repeat and over explain things that
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need to like explain, especially not repeat. But you know, it's a 1999 shonen adaptation.
Yeah, like in the beginning, I think he tells everybody like, "Oh, I ate the devil fruit." LOL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luffy's attitude towards it is far more of what the series should have had. But like at the same time, it makes sense to have people shocked because as they say, there's not a whole lot of people in the East Blue that have devil fruit powers.
Yeah.
You only even um you only even see two in the East Blue,
Yeah.
which are Buggy and Smoker.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, so they go to leave the Marine Island, and once again, there's this emergent theme of liberation. He has liberated not even just the town, but the Marines from Captain Morgan, and furthermore, he
They're like
liberates.
so happy. Like it's crazy like how happy they are.
Oh yeah, I mean they were being oppressed,
Yeah.
and Luffy comes in and liberates them. It's what he does.
Yeah.
But furthermore, there's this interesting scene with Luffy, Zoro, and Kobe in which he liberates Kobe once again by pretending to like fire him from his crew.
Oh yeah.
And so there's an interesting conversation there. I also accidentally skipped over it, but there's the really important scene of Zoro swearing his loyalty to Luffy, not just because he saved his life, but also because he sees how Luffy is like willing to go again to help out and go against people. And he's like, this is a person that I can follow.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, I think it doesn't he say like I don't want to be a pirate, but like, I will follow you and like,
Yeah. And he's like,
something
and
like that. Like I will stay with you until I achieve my goal. And Luffy's like, all
yeah,
right, that's fine.
and
Whatever. Like,
yeah, and it's also helps out his own dream. Like as he says, the king of the pirates shouldn't have no less than the world's greatest swordsman.
yeah.
Um, and so becoming Luffy's crewmate is like a really fantastic first step on that journey.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I found interesting is that the Marines were contractually unable to actually thank Luffy for saving them. And I think that's interesting with what I mentioned before about the Marines being bad is like they can't even have the leeway to thank a pirate for saving them.
Yeah, and it's not even like you could maybe give it to them that like nobody's watching them, but like they I guess they kind of live by their code, and that's
Yeah, it's like how would
yeah.
anybody find out that they let these pirates that obviously could beat them all up go, and also that they starved themselves because they let the pirates go. Like they didn't need to do any of that, but
Yeah.
they felt contractually obligated to do so.
Yeah. Wait, which is like really sad when you think about it,
Yeah, you can't even thank your savior.
Yeah.
So, next up is Orange Town. And before you give your thoughts, I want to ask about do you even remember how all three of the central characters of Luffy, Zoro, and Nami, how they ended up in Orange Town? Because I think it's very interesting and very funny.
I don't remember, honestly.
So,
No.
starting with Nami, because she's the first to arrive. She's going on her. Also, she had shown up in the previous episodes as well.
It was like on a cruise ship first.
Yeah, the cruise
And then
ship
she
raided
got on a
by
pirate ship.
Alvida,
Mhm.
and she went to rob the Grand Line map that she from the Marines, but Bucky had stolen it first.
Yeah.
But the way she gets
So
into
that's
Orangetown, is she's sailing like towards Buggy, and a few of his crew who are out on a boat for whatever reason, sailing around, find her in the ocean, and they see, and she like pretends to be like sick or unwell or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So they all get on her boat and like go to like rob her or whatever, and then she turns around and steals their boat and strands them with nothing.
Oh yeah, and then Luffy, I think, gets like caught by a bird or something up in the air, right?
He goes to catch a bird to like eat, but instead he gets dragged by the bird over to Orangetown, and Zoro has to like quickly paddle after him. But after a while,
Zoro does it without a second thought. He's just like, oh, fuck, and just takes off after him.
Yeah, and the reason why they do that in the first place is also because both of them are shit at sailing, so they're both lost at sea as well. And then Zoro, in the process of paddling after him, comes across the buggy pirates that Nami abandoned, and they take him to the island.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So they
and of course they're like scared as fuck that Zoro, the
pirate hunter.
Yep.
Well, actually, I think they tried to rob to steal his boat, but he obviously beat them up.
Yeah, he's like, haha, nice try, now paddle.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So, actual Orangetown itself. Your thoughts?
I did like this arc, and because I do like the introduction of Nami. It kind of makes you think like, kind of like, well, what are her goals? Like, why doesn't she like pirates, right? And then we kind of get the introduction of Buggy, who goes up a little later. And I do like Buggy as a villain, just because he's just so fucking silly. And like his design is so silly, but like I don't know, but Buggy's kind of hot. So, like,
fun fact, by the way, Buggy is, if I'm not wrong, Oda's favorite character.
Really?
Yeah, but you'll see why later on. You don't really get the full brunt of why he likes Buggy so much in just Orangetown.
And then we have like that little dog. What's the little dog's name?
Depending on the translation, it's anywhere from Chow Chow to Shoo Shoo to, I feel like Xiao Xiao would even work, because I think it's some kind of like Chinese inspired name. At least sounds that way. But the dub goes for Shoo Shoo and the manga goes for Chow Chow.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of like guarding your treasure, and then like having that treasure in your heart, and moving on, to your own adventure. So I do kind of like that message with the dog, and the dog was so cute. So yeah.
So
and like you get to see more villains, and God, the villains are so fucking silly. Like they're just like they're so dumb. Like I think I started to get really sleepy when we were watching like the Acrobat, and I was like, I think you had said like he's not even using like his swords, and I was like, oh my god, he isn't. like I was like half asleep watching it. Like he isn't. He's like, what is happening? I'm so confused.
Kabuchi, the buggy pirates are so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
And we've watched a little side arc too at this point where they're even dumber.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So let's start with probably the only thing worth mentioning, like, about Nami in this arc, and how she is not just she's predominantly a thief. That's like what she's doing. She's stealing from pirates. And it's of course interesting that she cares so much about stealing from pirates, and then later on she declares she never wants to be a pirate. Um, but the interesting thing to note here is even though she's barely known Luffy and is taking advantage of him, when she's told to kill Luffy by Buggy, she refuses to do it.
Yeah, she can't do it.
So
And I think because she's seen how good-hearted Luffy is, like how honest he is, and how he's different from any other pirates she's seen.
I think
And
it's I think it's more than that, and it in
Mhm.
part comes from a retrospective of Arlong Park as well, where she just does not have the balls to kill anybody. She doesn't want to kill
Yeah.
people. It's part
Yeah.
of the reason why she would use a bow staff instead of any sort of like
Oh,
sharp weapon.
sharp.
Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I didn't notice that, but yeah, that's true. That makes sense.
she is too much of a coward, shall we say. The Zoro even calls her out on it later on. Just too much of a
A-
coward to kill people, especially someone like Luffy, who helped her out.
And I think Luffy tells her too, because she joins, like, she pretends to join Buggy's crew just to get the map right of the Grand Line.
Yes, yeah, the map
I
of the
think is
Grand
her
Line.
goal. And Luffy kind of calls her out because he's like, haha, this is what you get for jumping into a plan half-assed, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah,
And so he even calls her out on that. Like, you have poor planning and you're a coward. Like, wow, way to go. And
yeah.
that's just his. That's just the usual, like, I'm calling you out on your shit kind of thing.
Luffy is the goat at calling people out.
Yeah,
Um,
which, like, I didn't think about, but, like, yeah, it's true. Like, come on, Nami, get your shit together, bro.
yeah.
But, like,
So we also have Buggy, who not only has interesting powers, but also has an interesting humor associated with him. Do you remember the jokes, and what do you think about them?
I don't really remember the jokes. I remember, like his he's self-conscious about his nose, right?
That's
But,
that's
like,
that's the main one.
okay.
He constantly inserts flashily into his sentences,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but he will turn anything that even like remotely sort of kind of sounds like big red nose into someone making fun of him for having a big red nose.
Oh,
um
yeah. That's right. Kind of like Alvita. Oh my god, y'all
yeah.
are so self-conscious.
Yeah, yeah, which is it's very odd, very silly. It's not, I don't think, Oda's best slapstick humor, but it's fine. Can't all be winners.
Yeah, but I really like Buggy's powers because he uses them very well. Like you see Luffy who doesn't like really think in combat. I mean he's just like very like I'm gonna go into it and I'm gonna attack, right? And but Buggy, he's very like sneaky.
Yeah,
Like
Luffy
like
is.
he'll like he'll attach like he'll detach an arm and like I think he like ended up stabbing Zoro in the back.
Yeah,
So
Luffy.
like he's very sneaky like that. And I do like that about Buggy.
Yeah, Luffy goes about fighting in a more intentionally creative manner, which he's very like free floaty about what he's doing, coming
Mhm.
up with stuff new, like sorts of attacks and stuff on the fly,
Oh yeah.
and just
Yep.
kind of like doing things. Whereas Buggy like already has a pre-built set of moves, shall we say, in
Yeah.
his toolkit, and ways he understands how to use his power.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I do like in a villain. Like I do like villains like that, which is probably why I'm like Buggy. Like we
Go,
stand Buggy in this house.
let's
Like
fucking go,
honestly, we
Buggy.
stand Buggy.
I mean, Buggy is a dick, but he's far from the worst pirate. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I like his voice actor. His voice actor does a great job.
very expressive, very
Yes.
expressive. Yeah, his power is also just interesting in of itself, and that he can separate his body into, um,
Sections, right?
yeah,
Like
the chop fruit,
yeah.
into you can chop his body up. Uh, I believe it's technically infinitely many sections, though he never like on his own does that.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly than that, of course, is that he can make his body parts float around in like a radius around him, um, which is, if he wasn't able to do that, his power would literally be useless outside of surviving being cut in half. But it makes for
which he does with like Zoro, right? Like Zoro
yeah,
like cuts
as
him and you think he's cut, but he's
yeah.
not. He just detached his body, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, it makes for a very difficult opponent for Zoro, who uses swords, because Zoro starts by slicing him in half immediately, and then when he lets his guard down, he gets stabbed in the back.
Yep.
Bad matchup for Zoro. Luffy beats him up, so it works out.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, and Zoro also. It's the sort of introduction of people just sleeping off their injuries, basically. Particularly Zoro. He just always sleeps off his injuries, man.
Yeah, and even like Luffy too. Like I think they just rest like at the mayor's house before they like go after Buggy again.
I don't think Luffy does, because Luffy doesn't get like
true.
seriously injured like Zoro does. It's just Zoro. But yeah, the two of them and also Sanji are literally built different, and that they can not just withstand all the crazy attacks, but their constitution just like heals itself in a manner that normal people would not. So
yeah, which is like it's so funny, and like Zoro, he snores and he talks in his sleep, and it's funny, it's cute.
Yeah. Yeah, they can hold a conversation in their sleep.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I'm like that's when you spend too much time together.
Yeah.
Because when you can hold a conversation in your sleep, literally.
Yeah.
So dumb.
Yeah. So here is the main emotional crux of Orange Town. In the same way that the rice ball was for the Marine base, the way it works for Orange Town is the dog and the mayor. So what do you think of Shushu's backstory?
It made me so sad. You always hear about like, like his master, that like had built the store from the ground up, and Shushu had always been beside him, even before the store, like helping him buy food. Like they were inseparable. And then he got sick and he had to go to the hospital, and he's like, "Oh, watch the store until I come back." And of course, he doesn't come back; he dies.
Yeah.
And Shushu still guards the store to the best of his ability, and of course, he gets beaten up by stupid Richie.
Yeah.
God, fuck the line, man.
Because that store is that dog's treasure in the absence of his master.
Yeah, and it's like the only thing he has left to remind him of that. And then it gets burnt down, and Luffy sees that and gets like pissed off. He goes after the lion and whatever the fuck the other guy's name is. I don't even know.
It's Emoji and Richie.
Yeah, and of course, and of course he gets beaten up, and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you whatever gold you want." And Luffy's like, "No, that's like not what I want. Like I came to kick your ass because you took Shushu's like treasure, pretty much."
Yeah.
And that shows again like what matters to Luffy is like the things that keep people going and the things that matter to people, even if it's just a dog too. And like he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
It's an animal, but he values what other people value. So and animals apparently. So
and this is something that's very interesting about Luffy as a character, because for all intents and purposes, he's super simple. He's simple-minded and easy to understand, but at the same time, the way that he understands situations and reacts to them, and the way that he helps people and what he values is actually rather complex.
Yeah,
and so
because like I know when I see people I'm interested in what people are interested in, but I don't like think that far into it, you know. But Luffy does. So
Uh, Luffy is able to sympathize with people, and
yeah,
and he sympathizes with their plight and he helps them out. Um,
yeah, and of course like with consent because Shushu is very like don't fucking touch the store, bro. Like at first with Luffy, and and so like Shushu is crying. I'm so
yeah,
sad. He's crying, and so Luffy gives him like a box of food, and he's like, this is all I could find. And Shushu is appreciative of that.
because Luffy holds a lot of respect for people who value things in a similar manner as he does, in the fact that the dog with the store and the town with the mayor, those two both value those things as their treasures in the same way that Luffy values his hat as a treasure. And more importantly, the fact that they're willing to put themselves in harm's way and self-sacrifice in order to protect those treasures is something that
Yeah.
Luffy understands very well. And that's
because
when
and the
he
mayor
steps in.
yeah, and the mayor had sent everybody away too, and he was an older guy, he could have asked the younger men to help out, but he didn't.
I think he's
He
actually
sent
younger
everybody
than
to
his
safety.
design makes him out to be, but I don't
Oh
remember.
yeah, really?
Yeah, I
Makes
don't
him look
know
old
his
as fuck.
actual age. He does look rather old, but he's not as old
But yeah.
as actually, who would be a good counterexample? I don't think he's as old as Whoop Slap. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Man, some people just age quicker than others, I guess.
yeah. So Moji and Ricci, the beast tamer and the lion, they destroy the dog's treasure and they disrespect those two. And this is the interesting thing to note with the buggy pirates as opposed to say Luffy in the treasure thing is that those the buggy pirates are like selfish in regards to treasure. They
Yeah,
have complete disregard for other
for
people's
people's lives.
treasures,
Yeah,
and only care about what they care about in terms of treasure. Whereas Luffy is like, no, everybody has their own personal treasure that they care about, and that deserves to be protected
respected. Yeah,
and respected and protected.
yeah.
Um,
And of course, but Bucky's whole thing is he wants more and more and more.
yeah,
So
well, it specifically values something else as treasure, which we'll get to in a short moment. But
yeah,
I'd also just like to note another badass Sora moment in which he's literally handicapping himself when he's fighting the Kabuki. He not only has the stab wound, but he like goes out of his way basically to take more attacks and not fight back until he's like, this is enough of a handicap to be a fair fight.
oh my god, yeah. It's like nuts. Zoro's like crazy.
Yeah.
Which he kind of too. He's kind of like a kind of reckless in the same way Luffy is sometimes. And it makes me nervous, like during fights and stuff. I'm just like this. Oh, I can't look. So, yeah,
Especially now that like this is not necessary. You understand that none of the Straw Hats are gonna die, but it's not necessarily like most other series where there's no kind of like permanent after effects of any given thing that happens. Like when you see in the Baratier when Zoro gets mortally wounded by Mihawk, that not only is going to result in a permanent scar, but also it carries over into the next arc when the wounds affect his ability to fight. So
yeah,
there is typically a lot of long running repercussions to what happens in any given arc, even if, as with most stories, you generally have an understanding that your main characters are not going to die.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So back to the important stuff. So this is the important distinction between specifically Buggy and Luffy is not just that Buggy is selfish about treasure, but also he doesn't understand the meaning of the word treasure. At the very least, not in the same way that Luffy does, because Buggy is like, no, treasure means wealth, and Luffy is like, no, anything can be anybody's treasure.
Yeah.
So
Not just gold or prizes, but
yeah,
even a shop, a town, you know,
yeah,
things that Buggy doesn't ever value or even consider.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And he enacts that view through harming, through damaging the hat that was given to Luffy by Shanks, who was on the same crew as Buggy, who Buggy hates for very silly reasons.
Oh my god, yeah.
Um,
They were just kids at the time, and Shanks didn't. I think right, they had gotten the devil fruit, the crew, and I can't remember. I guess Buggy had stolen it and was going to sell it, and was going
yes,
to get on a boat and take off and sell it. And of course, Shanks didn't know what was going on, and so he tried to like hide it in his mouth or something.
yes, he tried to
And
hide it in
Shanks
his
like,
mouth. He
stupid.
scared Buggy into swallowing it.
Oh my god. And
Um,
Shanks was like, well, I don't fucking know what happened. Like,
and as Luffy pointed out, it was with that story. It sounded like Shanks saved your life.
yeah, like, duh. Shouldn't you be grateful? Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I did just remember that that same like dynamic of the monetary treasure is noted in Nami, who like internalizes that, and it's like, wow, Luffy cares about his hat, um, in way more strongly than anybody would care about personal wealth, which is the thing that I'm trying to accumulate,
Yeah.
which has implications for later on and starts to change her perspective of the world through Luffy.
Yeah. And even like and and even to like she starts to see whenever she sees the way he interacts with Shushu, she's like, oh, she sees like the content of his character as well. That he is caring. He's not like other pirates who pillage and burn shit down.
Yeah. And so
Which that seems like the only view she has of pirates at this point in time. So
yeah, she only views pirates as a destructive force right now, whereas
yeah,
that perspective will change through the actions of Luffy and the subsequently recruited crew.
yeah,
Now, so after that, of course, Luffy launches Mini Buggy with a Gum Gum Bazooka and leaves all of his body parts behind. And the buggy parts and the buggy pirates flee. And what does that result in? Liberation for
yep,
the people of Orangetown. They now have their town back, even if it's half destroyed because of the buggy balls.
yep. But it's their treasure and it can be rebuilt again.
Yeah,
And restored.
they can always rebuild the town, and more importantly, they're free from Buggy's oppression.
Yeah.
Uh,
And of course they accidentally like of course Luffy like he doesn't like put any nuance in his words, like they're like, are you guys pirates? And Luffy's like, yeah. Did you destroy town? I don't know what kind of. And so they run him off thinking he's the one that caused it, because and Nami's just
yeah,
like,
there's that.
can you
Yeah.
word yourself better?
It's like this did not need to happen. Meanwhile, the
Yeah.
mayor, who was
Knocked
unconscious
out.
at the
Yeah.
time when they started chasing him off, after they've already set sail, he regains consciousness, and it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? He
Yeah.
literally saved us.
Yeah, pretty much. Ugh.
Yeah.
And it's just because Luffy is just like so honest and just like speaks so frankly. It confuses. Like,
yes.
God, it can be a little confusing sometimes.
Yeah. And yeah, that's another thing that happens pretty much every arc for the most part, is Luffy ends up being like chased away
Yeah.
by the people that he's saved for one reason or another, generally speaking, because he's a pirate.
And he's totally fine with that, like,
yeah, that this
because
is
he knows what he did.
yeah, and this is something that he does explicitly state later on. He has no interest in being a hero. He just does what he what pleases him.
Yeah.
The way that he views being the Pirate King as his dream is actually because the title means that you are the freest person in the world, more so than any of the other shit that may come with it.
Yeah. So what does validation from people like mean? You know?
Yeah, he doesn't care about other people's validation. He just wants to have freedom.
Yeah.
And so the arc ends off with a temporary alliance forming with Nami, which is an important distinction from her becoming a member of the crew.
The navigator. For,
yeah.
You know, for the Grand Line.
Yeah, and she'll navigate for them moving forward.
Yeah.
Where Zoro is Luffy's first mate, Nami will become Luffy's navigator. And she also stole all Buggy's shiz and the map to the Grand Line, which she was there originally for.
Yeah.
So that's all of the plot related stuff that I have any sort of preparation for. And it's been an hour and 15 minutes, so we'll close out with some miscellaneous thoughts about like the presentation of the series. You have any thoughts about like the character designs?
Of course, I love Nami's design. I think she's beautiful. She's gorgeous. Like, she's a queen. I think I mentioned, like, I love her outfits. I love her shoes. Like, she's great.
She's the one who gets the most different outfits, of course.
Yeah. And Luffy, I would describe that he kind of looks like a hobo. Like, he looks like a bum a little bit. You know, it looks like he just like went through a bin of like free clothes and kind of picked out whatever was best.
Yeah, he wears a red vest and blue shorts with like cut off jean shorts.
Yeah, just like super cute, you know.
And he wears sandals too,
it.
Not shoes.
Oh,
sandals.
Yeah, which is crazy because he uses his feet and his legs to like kick, and you're wearing sandals.
Yeah, his sandals are somehow able to just like block blades, and it's like okay.
And Zoro, of course, he looks like a Chad. You know, like I really like his clothes. Like I think I'm like, doesn't the Zoro in the movie like kind of dress like that? Like if I'm remembering correctly.
Movie? Like there's a
lot
of
can't remember the Zoro movie I'm talking about. But
are you talking about the copyright thing that I briefly mentioned before?
Yeah.
No, he doesn't. That Zoro dresses in like black and has a face mask, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
And he also has like that Zoro looks more like Mihawk than he does Roronoa Zoro.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah. Luffy is very simple. Nami's eyes, I think, are interesting, especially when the camera like zooms in on her face. Like the way that her eyes are designed, zooming on her face does like not do the emotions of any particular scene any justice.
No, they look like dead fish eyes. Like I'm sorry, and sometimes they're kind of uneven. I noticed
there are some animation errors.
Yeah, like one will look smaller than the other, and like her smiles like will be kind of crooked. I'm like, what happened? Poor thing.
I've actually noticed it most often with Luffy's eyes because they're just like little black blips. They'll sometimes not be like even with each other.
Yeah,
it's very bizarre.
Yeah, but I'm like, it's the 90s. I guess I'll forgive it.
Yeah,
I'll just roll with it. But yeah, it does make the scenes kind of awkward with Nami.
Yes.
Especially for like the later arc,
Yeah. And Zoro's design is relatively simple as well. It's more samurai-ish, of course.
Yeah.
But what's done with his design is basically whenever he is called names or insulted, it's basically a reference to his design, specifically when Sanji does it. He'll be called like Mosshead or Green Hair or Haramaki Man because he's wearing the Haramaki around his stomach. So
okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
But I do like the green hair, and it from what I've seen, I guess like the green hair kind of changes a little bit.
Does it?
Like
I think it's pretty consistent.
Like in the later seasons.
Does it? I haven't paid that much attention. I mean, the visual aesthetic of the show definitely changes over over 20 years it's been animated, so
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
we'll talk about it as it becomes relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's pretty cool.
But
You love a
speaking of
character with green hair.
speaking of the visual aesthetic, though, what do you think of the visual aesthetic of this early part of the show?
Um, I mean, I guess it's okay. Like it's nothing super special, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
it-
but I do like I mean the arc that we're currently on right now is like there's fish, and I thought the fish designs are really cool.
yeah,
I mean that's kind of neat how
yeah,
like and like the sea monster designs are really cool. Like so and
yeah.
like the different ship designs are really unique.
Yeah, I think what it all comes back to with the visual aesthetic and also with the animation quality is that once again, this is a shonen adaptation that started in 1999, and the standards for quality of anime in general, of like basically your run of the mill uh, cyclical type stuff, but most importantly, shonen adaptations, the standard of quality were much lower back then than they are now. Where nowadays you have the high octane and fluid animation of the likes of Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man. Whereas back then, the only contemporaries were Bleach, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, um, those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head, and the standards for those were not particularly high. Dragon Ball can have some nice like impact and
Cowboy Bebop came out around that time too.
yeah, but that's like a different kind of show though, because that's
Yeah.
24 episodes, self-contained. Whereas shonen adaptation like One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball is intended to go over a long period of time and was started before the source material was even finished.
Okay,
Like
I see where
well
you're
into the
going.
early
Yeah.
stages of the source material in most cases. And so while you have, because a lot of times they'll directly replicate the drawings from the manga, while you have a lot of times some solid like impact and occasional like what they're called as sakuga, but basically fluid animation choreography moments, for the most part, is a lot of like static drawings, uh, uh, just slow moving type stuff,
Yeah.
and it's generally not like that great of a visual experience.
Yeah.
Standards of quality were a lot lower then, and in
Yeah.
part of it, I'm sure, is also the kinds of tools they had to work with. Digital animation was likely existed, but not that big of a deal back then, where it's like literally all you're ever going to see now.
Yeah. I mean, it's still enjoyable to watch. I mean, it's mostly like the characters that really
Yeah,
carry the show,
yeah,
and the art too.
yeah. The writing really sells early One Piece anime in particular.
Yeah.
I think the drawings and stuff are fine enough in the manga. They're pretty good in the manga, especially in the early part. But it's mostly the writing, particularly in the anime, that draws people in and makes them enjoy One Piece. It's very infectious.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's it for the first step of the journey of the Pirate Odyssey. We will return next week with not spilling grape juice on myself.
Oh my god.
We will
Way to go.
return. Yeah, we will return next week with Syrup Village, Baratier, and depending on how long it takes, maybe Arlong Park. Thanks
All right.
for joining us, and I will end this off by playing the first ending theme of One Piece.
All right. Thanks for having me.